Hello everyone, it's me Pratima. So today I am going to compare the two best phones of 2023, the iPhone 15 Pro Max and Samsung's Galaxy S23 Ultra. For me, Samsung's Galaxy S23 Ultra remains the best Android phone that money can buy right now. I have reviewed a bunch of flagship devices this year like the Xiaomi 13 Pro, the Vivo X90 Pro, OnePlus 11, the Honor Magic 5 Pro and a few other foldables as well. But this guy is still the benchmark for how just good Android phones can get in 2023. And if you have watched my comparison video, the S23 Ultra was a tough competitor to last year's iPhone 14 Pro Max in all the essential aspects you'd expect, like performance, cameras, and battery. But now there is a new challenger in town, the iPhone 15 Pro Max. So how does the best of Apple compare against the best of Android? Let me share my experience. Okay, one of the biggest changes Apple made with this year's iPhone 15 Pro Max is in terms of the build quality, and honestly, I could not be more thankful for it. I've always complained about the weight of practically each year's Pro Max iPhones before, but this year, the 15 Pro Max gets this titanium frames instead of stainless steel. Hence, the iPhone 15 Pro Max is significantly lighter, and I can feel that every time I'm holding it. So compared to the S23 Ultra, this thing does not feel nearly as bulky as its predecessor. Plus, I've found that these subtle curves around the edges make its hands-on feel a bit more comfortable than past iPhones and even the Galaxy S23 Ultra. But if you're someone like me with small hands, there's always somewhat of a struggle in handling such big phones. Anyway, the Galaxy S23 Ultra has an easy advantage as far as durability is concerned though. The titanium upgrade on the 15 Pro Max sure is nice, but sadly this isn't the most robust iPhone Apple has ever made. You can check out Zach's durability test or Phone Buff's drop test to find out more, but the point is that Apple has not been at its A game with the build quality of the iPhone 15 Pro Max. As you can see, my month-old 15 Pro Max already has some scuffs and discoloration around the frames as well, while my almost a year-old S23 Ultra looks perfectly fine around those parts. That reminds me, even though Apple has drastically reduced the cost to repair the back glass for the iPhone 15 Pro series, the repair cost for the S23 Ultra is still cheaper. So that's something you need to take into consideration as well. Okay, now talking about the display, Apple did not really do much new this time except for trimming down the bezels, but I don't mind that at all. Both phones use a Samsung-made OLED panel and offer some of the best visual experiences you can find on a smartphone. Although the iPhone 15 Pro Max does have a slight edge in terms of brightness levels, as it can hit 2000 nits at best compared to the 1750 nits on the S23 Ultra. Other than this, I'm sure you won't be disappointed interacting with either of these phones. From incredible colors to a smooth 120Hz refresh rate with LTPO and everything else, this is as flagship gets when it comes to smartphone displays. But unlike Apple, I also like how Samsung lets me customize the color profile, the color temperature and all, but iPhone also has a few tricks up its sleeves like True Tone, which I like to use all the time. And after the few updates, this dynamic island also feels much more fun to interact with. But to be fair, I think both Apple and Samsung should be doing a lot better with PWM dimming here, since these displays still have a pretty terrible screen flickering at low brightness levels. Anyway, as for audio, you get a set of stereo speakers on both these phones, and after listening to a ton of music, the iPhone 15 Pro Max sounds a bit fuller to my ears, especially in terms of mid-range and trebles. The S23 Ultra's audio quality is not that bad either, yet it does not quite match the level of clarity and details of the iPhone. As for the typing experience, the S23 Ultra to me feels much more nicer with its tight, precise haptics feedback. The Taptic engine on the 15 Pro Max is also quite capable, I know, but it's still not as good as Samsung. Alright, now let's talk about the performance, and right away what Samsung has managed to achieve with the custom version of Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chip and a much upgraded vapor chamber cooling system on the S23 Ultra is remarkable. But with the iPhone 15 Pro Max, you get an industry-first 3nm based A17 Pro chip and 6-core GPU, and Apple is promising a whole lot with this guy, especially in terms of the gaming arena, since you'll be able to natively play a couple of console-level games here, while it's also got a bunch of other features like hardware accelerated ray tracing and Metal FX upscaling to enhance your gaming experience. Yes, there were some overheating and some performance optimization issues initially, but like I said in my full review of the iPhone 15 Pro Max, the iOS 17.0.3 update has fixed all those problems. Having said that, I'm a little disappointed to see that Apple has not complemented all this performance horsepower with an equally effective cooling system. It's still using the same old graphite sheet instead of a much more competent vapor chamber cooling system to dissipate all the heat, which is why no matter what game I played, what benchmark I ran, or even when I was recording 4K videos for a reasonably longer duration, the S23 Ultra always managed to stay at least a couple of degrees cooler than the 15 Pro Max. This, of course, is not much of a concern under casual everyday usage, but if you're someone who lives in a relatively hotter area, you might see some throttle in performance and the lowering of screen brightness under heavy load. Maybe this kind of poor thermal performance has something to do with TSMC's low yield rate on its 3nm process as well, but there's no denying it. Apple seriously needs to move on from simple graphite sheets for its increasingly more powerful and more power-hungry iPhones. Moving on, I don't think there's really any point in comparing the software experience on the iPhone 15 Pro Max and the Galaxy S23 Ultra, to be honest. The iOS versus Android debate can go all day long, but the fact of the matter is that it ultimately all boils down to your personal preference. There are a few things that iOS does better, like system animation, app optimization and stuff, whereas Samsung's One UI has always been known for its customizability and the horde of features that allow you to get more done. Even when it comes to software updates, Apple and Samsung are two of the most trusted smartphone makers out there. Google just flipped the script with 7 years of OS and security updates for the Pixel 8 series, but I'm sure the 4+5 update cycle for the S23 Ultra is not a deal breaker to anyone either. And Apple has known to deliver it for as long as 6 years, which is incredible. Okay, that brings me to the cameras. So here I have taken over 500 photos and videos from both these phones and I have arrived at this conclusion. These two smartphone brands have gotten so good over the years, there really isn't a clear winner. Sometimes it's the S23 Ultra that captures better looking images, sometimes it's the iPhone 15 Pro Max, while I was surprised to see both phones take almost identical shots every now and then. And if I were to nitpick the quality of each and every photo, this video would get really long and boring, as if it's not already. But the one thing I've consistently noticed between these two is that the iPhone usually tends to shoot close to natural images in terms of color, sharpness and everything, while the S23 Ultra prefers a bit brighter photos with slightly punchier colors, be it from the main or the ultra-wide-angle camera. The way they handle human subjects is quite interesting though. If we're talking selfies, I'm more fond of what the S23 Ultra manages, as the subjects look more livelier compared to those from the iPhone 15 Pro Max, which can come off somewhat unflattering. But the iPhone 15 Pro Max is in a whole different league altogether in terms of portraits. Its 1x and 2x look better than the S23 Ultra, although the real gem here is the new 5x periscope telephoto lens that takes absolutely stunning portraits. Its 120mm focal length means that it's not always practical, but you get way better subject focus and background blur from this guy versus the S23 Ultra 70mm telephoto shooter manages. Surprisingly enough, the zoom shots from the iPhone 15 Pro Max up from 5x to up to 10x are also really impressive this time. But beyond that, the S23 Ultra is obviously going to give you better results since it has a dedicated periscope telephoto camera with 10x optical zoom. But the iPhone 15 Pro Max has gotten quite good at zoom shots too. And the iPhone 15 Pro Max continues to stand out as far as smartphone videography is concerned. You can shoot at up to 4K 60fps from all of its rear cameras like the S23 Ultra, but it even lets you switch between the lenses while you're recording. Things like stabilization and exposure control are also noticeably better on the iPhone, especially while shooting ultra-wide-angle shots and cinematic videos. I admit it does not have 8K recording option like the S23 Ultra, but I think 8K is kind of an overkill for most folks anyway. Likewise, the iPhone's log video recording option is a much more useful tool for creative professionals instead of being able to record videos at 8K. Finally, the battery life on these phones is pretty neck and neck, earning an easy A+ ranking in my books. Even on days with a lot of camera usage, gaming and everything else, I've been getting 7 to 8 hours of screen on time here with some juice left in the tank by the time I got home at night. Samsung also has gotten extremely good at optimizing overnight battery drain in its flagship phones, so that's good to see here as well. And if faster charging speed is something you care about, then the S23 Ultra is going to impress you a lot more as well, because even though Apple finally moved to USB-C port for this year's iPhones, the iPhone 15 Pro Max still fills up almost twice as slowly as the S23 Ultra. So after using these two phones side by side for a month now, it's needless to say that both of them are excellent premium smartphones that represent the very best the smartphone industry has to offer. But personally, iPhone's 5x camera has been an absolute game changer, and for someone like me who takes a lot of videos, the iPhone 15 Pro Max also has a slight advantage over the S23 Ultra in that very aspect. But then again, the S23 Ultra is now 9 months old, and to see that it's still competing so well against Apple's fresh new iPhone is just spectacular. Not to mention, the S23 Ultra has also seen some significant price drops, and right now it's cheaper by almost 50% in a lot of markets, whereas the iPhone 15 Pro Max's availability itself is not that seamless, at least not in the natural titanium finish, which is what most folks seem to be going for. So yeah, you really cannot go wrong with either of these phones, but still I think my primary phone going forward is going to be the 15 Pro Max, just because of that 5x telephoto lens. It's just so good to have with me all the time. However, I can't wait to see what Samsung has in stores with the upcoming S24 Ultra, which should be arriving a little earlier than usual if the rumors are anything to go by. So everybody, that was my very detailed comparison of the iPhone 15 Pro Max and the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. Do let me know which one would you choose as your primary device. And while you're doing that, do subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon as well. Till then, I'm Pratima, and thank you so much for watching.